The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line this Wednesday lunchtime in the Isle of Man. It's worth noting that 6 weeks today, 6 short weeks today, it'll be Christmas Day, and 7 weeks today, it'll be 2025. Which always prompts me at this point in the year to say, have you got your tree up yet? Is it all sorted? There's always somebody, isn't there? Any Christmas lights in your street? Or are you just planning? And have you sorted Christmas lunch out yet? Do you know who's coming? Do you know who may be coming? Do you know what you're having? All sorted? I'm guessing it is. 7 minutes past 12. Tomorrow, of course, we're talking about housing. David Ashford, MHK, for Douglas North, is on, chair of the government's Housing and Communities Board, and of course a former Douglas councillor. Devon Watson on the Executive Committee of the Douglas City Council, also chair of the Housing and Property Committee, and we'll be talking about housing, particularly in Douglas, obviously, as Douglas City Council have just announced they put the Douglas Lord Street flats on the market. I think they're on with Black Grace Cowley. If you've got a couple of million or so to knock around there in your back pocket, you want to buy them. What do you think about this? Also, I've got a message I'll put tomorrow to Mr. Watson and Mr. Ashford as well. The James Street and King Street flats as well. I think they're about the same age. What's going to be happening to them? Any plan for them? Anyway, that came in yesterday, so I'll put that on the list for tomorrow. If you want to get a question in for Mr. Ashford and Mr. Watson tomorrow, by all means, you can jot off an email to me. It's the out-of-hours office line is manninline@manxradio.com, or the answer phone's on 682-631. I live in the south of the Isle of Man. I've got a young family, and there isn't much going on for a young family. In fact, there isn't much for children in general in the south, and the children's play areas haven't been updated in many years. And looking at the parks around the Isle of Man, Ramsey, Douglas and Peel seem to have invested in their parks in recent years, installing splash parks, making it more appealing and a safe place for young families. But in the south, they've been neglected massively. I think they rely too heavily on the Port Erin beach being a good family day out, which of course it is. But there's no complacent, it's so complacent, and I think it's lazy. They've only held one bonfire night and fireworks display in the last 5 years in Port Erin. Port Erin commissioners have said that they're saving between £7,000 and £10,000 a year in not doing fireworks and bonfire, and claim the money has been spent on events like TT Day and the Beach Festival. But these events used to happen anyway, and they aren't any better now for the supposed extra money spent on them. More transparency is needed to see where the money is. That's Texter 240. We were talking about the state of some of the play equipment around the Isle of Man, and in particular in Nobles Park, the children's playground there is somewhat worse for wear. Sometimes if you look at it, it looks a bit like a Banksy, because a lot of the flooring is chafing away and a lot of the plastic is peeling and the paint's gone. Distressed is probably the best way to look at it. So is it something that we should feel entitled to? I mean, obviously, it appeals to you if you have young children, or perhaps if you are a grandparent with young children. But for lots of other people, children's play areas and children's play equipment aren't terribly important. But it's just one of many things that just seem to be flaking off the Isle of Man. MPs championed green issues at the last election. I don't recall any of them saying they would go green irrespective of the cost to the people, says 313G. The rich will get richer, says Desmond, looking on the bright side. I think he's talking about the green agenda and what's going to happen in the future and where the money's going to come from. Where is the money going to come from? Here's a message in that just says, They're digging up the new prom to replace the black stuff on the walkways, says 797. The new prom, that's it, the new prom. How old is it now? Only 2 turbines from 300,000 around the world have ever blown down, says Rich. So it's hardly skittles. It will be nice, and in the pursuance of transparency and openness, it would be nice to know from the people who make the turbines how they go wrong, where they go wrong, and what happens, and whether they do go wrong. Do you remember a few weeks ago we were talking to Jerome Watts, the guy who used to race ocean-going yachts and build them, so he knows all about glass fibre. And he says there are hundreds, if not thousands, of used wind turbine blades laying in landfill because there is no known way of recycling wind turbine blades. I suppose what they're doing is hoping that at some point in the future, technology will allow them to recycle wind turbine blades. But at the moment, we're not. So we're kind of hoping on the future where that's concerned. Maybe that's the tactic, really, to just hope on the future. Also, that news about Shell, says Keith. Shell and BP are drilling for a new source of oil in the Shetlands. Is that right? Will the companies be able to claim against the government when they have no electricity and the food that they're storing is ruined, says 508. This is if in the future if we don't have backup for what they call the base load for electricity, then what's going to happen in the future? Well, you're kind of hoping that Manx Utilities will have a contingency for this. If, as in the past couple of weeks, not much wind has blown and the wind turbines don't provide us with the electricity we need, and of course it is contingent on the wind blowing, whereas the electricity company, Manx Utilities, know at the moment where the peaks are going to be. They will know that if there's a big football match on half-time, there'll be a couple of thousand kettles put on. So suddenly, demand will go up. During peak drama series like Coronation Street, in the commercial breaks, that's when it will happen. So we know when electricity peak demand is going to happen. In fact, the electricity companies throughout the UK always used to check with the TV companies what was on and when there was likely to be a surge in demand. It's matching that surge in demand with the surge in supply, which at the moment you can't really do with wind turbines because, well, it blows when it blows. Sometimes it provides electricity when you don't need it, and sometimes it won't provide enough when you do need it. But we're hoping that the people at Manx Utilities and Orsted and Wardell Armstrong know what they're doing, and at the moment we're trusting in the future. Here's David with us now. Hello, David.
Hi, Andy. Just going to give you a quick update. I talked to John this morning.
Oh, right, yes.
2 weeks in the car, it's crippled him. I think it's set him back. But now he spoke to me this morning and said he's got a room, wait for it, £150 a week for the room. So he's got a base to go to.
Right.
And he thanks the charities and people who have suggested things too. He's been to Gry, up on Broadway there. Great lot of people, give him a lot of help, more than the government have done to him and his social workers and so forth, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as John. So I won't be on the radio tomorrow because there's a big day in Onken. But anyway, you'll advertise that in the morning. Make sure you vote early. The thing I wanted to mention too is David Ashford is going to be on. He's the leader of the Housing Board.
Housing and Communities Board, yeah.
That's right. And there was supposed to be a policy for homeless people.
It came out, there's supposed to be. That report should have been out in August. They paid £60,000 for it, so we'll see more from Mr. Ashford tomorrow about that.
Well, yeah. Well, so I'm giving them an advance warning at the end of the day. And what's happening with the old nurses' home? What's happening there? Are we going to sell them? It's because don't forget, it's the government's only custodial people for when they're in power. And then when you get a new set, they'll do maybe something different. But are we going to sell them? Are we going to lease them? maybe Douglas Corporation or the city are going to control them. I'd like to know where the taxpayers' money is going to there, and where are we going to receive an income? And if they receive an income, where's it going to go to? Is it going to go?
Okay, let me just get back to John for a moment. And obviously, is he getting enough to eat? And I mean, has he got somewhere to sleep? Then definitely.
Yes, definitely somewhere to sleep. Is he getting enough to eat? I would say no. He's the benefit coming back into Douglas or Onken area too. He's seeing the doctor a bit more. So, in my opinion, it's like us all really. You need breakfast, you need a midday meal, and something at night, don't you? And then Saturdays and Sundays are a long time for him, and a long time for anybody who's struggling all the time. And this is what I can't understand, where government or some of these politicians are doing nothing. They're doing nothing at all. Why can't they get together and get this homeless policy of all people who have fallen off the rails back into action?
Okay.
Because what happens then, you go back into hospital, and you go on the trip then to Nobles, Ramsey Cottage, and then I still haven't got the answer from the health service there, where the people told me in front of John at a conference we had that they were going to charge him £360 a night to stay in the bed, because he was a bed blocker, right? Still haven't had the policy, and that although it was promised by some civil servants. And Martin still hasn't come back to me, and that's now 3 weeks.
That's 3 weeks since you contacted this person. And which department was it?
Social care.
Okay, and nothing in 3 weeks.
No. All he said to me over the phone, he wouldn't give me his second name, which is fair enough, but his name was Martin. I've got his telephone number. That he knew about John, he knew about his circumstances. So I said to him, so you know about all this, but what are you doing? How are you helping? You know, he didn't expect things to happen overnight, but now it's we're coming into 4 weeks, aren't we now? And he's just said to me this morning there, he couldn't hack it in the car anymore. It's rough. It was doing him no good at all, and he's now found a room, but he's paying £150 a week. So he said to me this morning, his benefits don't cover it. So what does he do?
Well, keep us informed and give him all our very best.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. 19 minutes past 12. New listeners start here. There was a question, that was the case of John, a homeless man who at the moment is living in his car, sleeping in his car. Although, as you heard from David, he has found a room that he has to pay for. But times are tough. Life is tough. And sometimes people, let's face it, go off the rails. And life conspires, circumstances close in on people, and it's at that point, surely, that the governments, the authorities will then help. And we'll find out from David Ashford tomorrow about that homeless report that I think was due in August. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Andy. All right, mate?
Very good,
Yep.
thanks.
Yeah, spoke to you on Monday, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, but I ended up with only 30 seconds left, so I didn't get a lot of the things I wanted to say through. So, if I may...
off you go.
The week before I was away, but before I went away, I listened to the debate Tim Glover had brought up about the no confidence. Well done to him. And I listened to all of that. And one thing that struck me was that they all like to do their long, drawn-out speeches, of course, but I would say the vast majority of them all admitted that this present government had made such a mess of things, but we'll give them another chance. And when all said and done, it was farcical anyway, because they don't want to lose their own jobs, so they're going to vote for him. So be aware the next one might be a secret ballot. So that's that out of the way. Secondly, I love Wilf. He's brilliant. He speaks his mind and he's dead on what he says. So well done, Wilf.
In particular, what?
Just everything. Am I allowed to say crap on radio?
No, you're not.
Well, I won't say it then. but I think you know what I'm meaning. He has no faith in the government whatsoever, which is probably right the way through the island, that. The other thing I was going to mention was I brought up COP on Monday, COP29. And we'd only having 30 seconds. I didn't get some of the things out. But it's showing to be itself a bit of a farce again. And also, I don't know if anyone remembers, a couple of weeks ago, the actual main man from COP29 was exposed selling oil and gas to some of the companies that had signed up, to some of the countries, should I say, who had actually signed up for the agreements. So, yes, farcical. The next thing is you had somebody on call Rich a few minutes ago. Only 3's blow down. 6 in one go in China, all typhoon proof. And I think he'll find that if he delves into it, there is hundreds, literally hundreds of them, which have blown down or have been damaged through storms. So what I would like to see, actually, is you had somebody saying the other day about a referendum. Well, give the south of the island a referendum, and I'll tell you what, you'd get an answer straight away, without a doubt, honestly. I haven't, for the last 5 months, I haven't heard anybody come on. I think it was last Friday you had you show everybody that came on except for one caller who didn't even give his name. He just sent you an email. But everybody else said no. And that is the way the feeling is out here. So I just can't understand why the more and more information we are getting, I mean, look at America. America's going to pack it in altogether. Germany is, they're opening mines left, right and centre. Australia, you name it, all the big countries. And again, I'll give you love that percent, you know, that number that you love.
29p per kilowatt hour.
29p, right. Well, the figure I love is 0.8. You know what that one is, don't you?
Go on.
That's what the Isle of Man is in percentage to whatever difference it will make in the world.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. We're going to bankrupt ourselves.
Okay. All right,
Thanks
Eddie.
for the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for calling today.
Yep. Cheers, mate.
Kevin dropped a note in, Kevin246. We've got gas reserves on our doorstep. We have a gas-powered power station built, ready in place, working, operating. And the government a few years ago spent a fortune on converting everybody to natural gas. Do you remember that? That was fun, wasn't it? Had some fun in Oncombe when that was happening. The infrastructure's already in place and ready to use. Where's Coast gas when you need it? So why is the government not pursuing these potential gas reserves on its doorstep? Kevin says, it's a no-brainer for me. Surely we need a referendum on climate net zero. Well, Eddie was mentioning this COP29, which is the Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Snappy, eh? It's happening in Baku in Azerbaijan, which is, well... Ali dropped me a note in just to say this COP29 thing is beyond parody. That Azerbaijan, I mean, I don't know whether the Azerbaijani people are listening, but is one of the most corrupt places on earth. It's an authoritarian state. It's got corruption from top to bottom. And the official partners of COP29 are businesses that are owned by the ruling family, the Aliyev family, that have got ties to the family business. Azerbaijan has signed the Paris Agreement in 2016 and ratified it on 2017. So surely that just shows that this really isn't serious. Putting any public money into the film industry would be madness, says Francesca. Hasn't the government learned from the last disaster when £26 million disappeared without trace, with no accountability? It could end up another golden fund free from FOI and an opportunity for public money to fund luxury lifestyles, as with other non-workable schemes. Surely this is the government should be open and honest without delay on this. Well, this is David Ashford. I mean, David's going to be in tomorrow. We won't have chance, I don't think, to talk about this, purely because we're talking about housing and homelessness and what have you. But this is the story about David Ashford asking Tynwald to consider the merits of having an Isle of Man film industry again. Well, it was a petition that was handed in by James George Hargreaves. Mr. Hargreaves wants a £20 million rolling fund for feature films, print and advertising, a loan guarantee scheme implemented. He says he's aggrieved by the decimation of the film industry. He describes himself as an entertainment professional for more than 50 years standing, with a successful experience in music, television, film production and film promotion. This is James George Hargreaves.
Where people working on the marketing side of the film industry are able to actually get into promoting films not only on the Isle of Man but across the world, particularly in the United States. It will attract star names to the island. In fact, we have a project that we're working on that already has a double Oscar-winning actor involved or attached to it. But unfortunately, we're not going to make the movie here. It's an Isle of Man story because there are no tax breaks, no incentives to do that. I want to see going forward that there are incentives, and my petition is actually putting forward a very smart, inventive way of attracting people without losing money. That is a loan guarantee scheme for promotion of films, not the production of films. The mistake that was made was that the Isle of Man put money into production of films that were not promoted at the end of the day. And as P.T. Barnum said, a funny thing happens when you don't promote. Nothing. Success leaves clues. If you look at Barbie, for instance, everybody knows Barbie, whether you've seen the movie or not. It cost $145 million to make, but the P&A, the promotion budget, was $150 million. Don't put money into production. Producers will always find money to make their movie. What they won't always find money to do is to promote their movie once they've made it.
Do you remember the films being made on the Isle of Man? I suppose everybody must have an experience of when films were... Do you remember there used to be loads of them made? 20, sometimes 30 a year were being made, partially made here, sometimes wholly made here. Some big ones, some big successes. It did bring money to the Isle of Man, what was called industrial tourism. It brought in film companies who used to come in. Part of the deal was that I think it was something like 40% of the primary shoot had to be done on the Isle of Man. So the technicians, the actors, the people behind the film would come here, stay for a couple of months, drop their money, and then go. It would also provide casual work for many people, extras, drivers, runners, people who wanted to get into the film industry. Was it worth it? David Ashford wants to see a select committee established following a petition submitted by the Manx resident on Tynwald Day this year.
But I think what's important is that we look at the film industry. What might well come out of any committee is not that we need a £20 million fund. We all know that at the moment finances are tight. But that's what the petitioner wants, isn't it? That's what the petitioner wants, but like I say, it's about getting the committee to look at the petition, to look at ways of bringing things forward, because we did have a vibrant film industry on the island. There's questions about whether it was done about the right way and whether things were delivered in quite the right way, but we did actually have some big successes. And I think it's time for us to take a breath and look again, and the petition is a vehicle for doing that.
But people remembering the £26 million loss, Is there any chance of them saying, yes, let's have another crack at it?
Well, let's be clear on the £26 million loss, John. You'll have to remember there was at the time lots of conversations about that. I think actually what we need to do is just take a look. A committee may come back and actually say it's not viable and that we can't move this forward. But there may be other ways without actually having to put our hands into our pockets and for taxpayers' money to actually move this forward.
Did you see filmmaking on the island as a way of promoting the island?
I think it's a great way of promoting the island, and it certainly got us some international headlines and a lot of notice at the time.
The point was made that no film was ever actually set in the island. They all just used the island as a setting for somewhere else.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, you have New Zealand that has a very vibrant film industry, and how many of those films are actually set in New Zealand? Very few. So, it's about the scenery. It's about showing off what the Isle of Man is.
And remember, it wasn't just films. Television shows were made here. Do you remember Island at War that was supposed to be in the Channel Islands when suddenly Castletown was turned into Jersey and there were swastikas absolutely everywhere around the south. And lots of German vehicles here, there and everywhere. King William's College had a giant swastika in the quadrangle for a while. So what do? There was a feel-good factor about those films, wasn't there? Having famous people here. Do you remember Madonna stayed at the Sefton when Guy Ritchie was directing? Peter Fonda was here for Thomas and the Magic Railroad. John Hannah was here. Helena Bonham Carter. Many very famous people. John Malkovich. Johnny Depp. So do you think it's something, if we can make some money out of it, and David Ashford mentioned promotion for the Isle of Man, having films set on the Isle of Man, talking about the Isle of Man, and doing us some good where that's concerned, what they call soft power. Now, it may not be £20 million, but bearing in mind we need opportunities. Do you think it's worth a punt?
The nights are getting darker, and you know what that means. It's nearly Christmas. At Millie Chaps, you'll find all you need to add that sparkle this festive season. Decorate your home with quirky ornaments, fabulous rugs and lamps, and beautiful pictures. Millie Chaps also have a great range of unusual gifts, so don't delay. Call Santa, is that you?
Shh. Ooh, there's some great finds here at Millie Chaps.
Yes, there are. Take time to browse Millie Chaps of Ramsey, a town full of special little shops.
How would you like to be remembered? Why not create a lasting memory by leaving a legacy donation to the Queen's Pier Restoration Trust? This would help our dedicated team to continue the restoration to save our historic landmark. Whether you can make a regular donation, leave a legacy donation, or request funeral donations in lieu of flowers, you will be remembered. To find out more, email qprt@manx.net or visit us on Facebook. This audio has been kindly sponsored by Paul Carey & Sons.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows letting rain, keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows. Isle of Man Railways.
All aboard for the Polar Express train ride this December. You've seen the film, now live the magic as we journey from Douglas to the North Pole. Meet the characters from the Polar Express. Enjoy hot chocolate and cookies before you get to meet the main man, Santa. For timetables and to book, ask your family to call 662525 or visit rail.im.
Radio Caroline North is back on the air this weekend, live from our historic radio ship Ross Revenge. This month, in addition to the usual virtual cash prizes to spend in our web shop, we have extra prizes for our lucky winners. Signed copies of 3 novels written by last month's special guest, Mark Wesley. It all starts this Saturday morning at 10, straight after Carnaby Street. Online and on 1368 AM on Radio Caroline North.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Note in from James 623. So many people who went to the recent Manx Utilities and Wardell Armstrong consultations went in opposed and now know the full story. They're in favour. Dissenters who shout loudest get heard, but if they bother to hear any of the arguments instead of just standing outside, most of their claims will be disputed, says James. I'm not in agreement with Christmas trees going up early, but notice one in the window of the Devonian Hotel on Broadway yesterday. It's stunning. A lot of effort evidently has gone into the decoration, so well done to the Devonian on Broadway. Thank you, Carol. It's simply not true, says 623 again. 623. What is your name, 623? You're always so anonymous. Already 85% of turbine blades can be recycled as it stands. Is that 85% of the turbine blade or 85% of turbine blades in general? They'll be up to 95% by 2030. So if you could just be a bit more specific, 623 Anonymous, then we'd appreciate that. Any science behind that claim? I heard Wilf yesterday mention the play parks in Ramsey. The Murock's a good resource. However, Coronation Park, adjacent to May Hill, I think is a no-go area at times due to teenagers drinking. And also bringing in vandalism. It's just as bad at the bus station with no police presence around. Always an issue, isn't it, with children's playgrounds, that obviously when the children go to bed at 6, 7 o'clock at night, then they're open season, really, for people to misuse them. Quite how you get around that, that's really always happened, hasn't it? Older children have always used play parks in the evening. Quite what you do about it and how you stop vandalism. Well, there's CCTV, but how can you get around that? I wonder how many heat pumps have been installed with electricity at 29p per kilowatt hour. I can't imagine many more going in if green energy increases the kilowatt hour cost, says G. Does anybody know why there was such a strong police presence in Crosby last night about 7 o'clock? It looked like armed police were deployed. Ayrton Road was closed with no pedestrian or vehicle access from Peel Road. Needless to say, there was no information forthcoming from the police, says 475. It seems that there's a certain amount of overkill by police deployment at the moment. I'm not sure if this is to reassure us or intimidate us. How do you feel about it, 475? Forget green, says Liz. Lots of countries are drilling and digging. So let's protect the Isle of Man and our economy. Get behind Stu Peters' proposal in Tynwald next month, says Liz. Another day, says 068, another day in which solar and wind power is virtually non-existent. Instead of bankrupting us with the green agenda, can we please have more important issues dealt with, facing the fixing of the awful roads, sorting out Manx Care, says 068. Thanks to Kevin again. Oh, gas reserve. We've done this one already about the infrastructure and the gas reserves and what should happen in the future. I think, isn't it, Kroger got given 7 weeks to get everything sorted out. I think we're a couple of weeks into that so far. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, Julian's with us. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Very well today, yeah.
Before I just talk about rickets, I noticed that in May, 5 large turbines were destroyed in a storm at the Orient Wind Farm in Greenfield, Iowa alone. That was 10% of the fleet was completely flattened. So I think there's quite a lot around the world that happened.
Do you know anything about the possibility or the feasibility or the practice of recycling wind turbine blades? Because I've heard that really wind turbine blades just lay in landfill, but the anonymous correspondent seems to know more but won't tell us where the information's coming from. Can you recycle wind turbine blades?
No, it's pretty much the same problem with lithium batteries on EVs. The cost and the energy required to do it is worse than just building new ones. So, you imagine a football field length blade that you've got to cut up, and the stuff, the elastomers and the plastics, and of course the propane that's used to extrude them, which of course is an oil-based product. You use up a lot of these resources just trying to get rid of them, and they're sandwiched with all kinds of different things. It's a bit like with paper, if you get oils and things on it, it's impossible to extract it out of it. So, they always say if you're going to recycle cardboard and paper, make sure you don't get other things in it. So just on the same subject quickly, I went to the Energy and Clean Tech Forum yesterday at the Manx Museum in the auditorium.
Oh, yeah, that was...
And I got to ask...
Who was giving that? Was it David Quirk?
I didn't see him there, but there was Steve Forden, member of the MUA, John Galloway from Orsted. I asked a question which I didn't really get an answer to because we've had the consultation on both Orsted and the Erie Stain. And I asked them, how can we give informed consent when we don't know why the cost of the Erie Stain wind farm is doubled in a year? The answer to that one was, well, we haven't had the environmental impact assessment yet, and also we don't know what other things. So if it's doubled in a year, that kind of, if we want to know what that 29p is going to look like in the future, how can you make that assessment? And then, of course, Orsted, again, what's the seabed lease going to give us? And also, how much are we going to get if they redirect some power to us? None of the answers were forthcoming. So I don't see that the Isle of Man, if anyone says that they had their mind changed at going to any of the meetings, that question about what is this actually going to do to how much you get on your electricity bill, there's no answer forthcoming as to what on earth that's going to be.
And we mentioned in the past the fact that there doesn't seem to be, I mean, apart from the whole concept of, being green and clean, that's very pleasant, living in a green and pleasant land. But so basically that's the feel-good factor. But, there are finances that come into this, and particularly personal and household finances. I can't understand why the PR companies who are advising the people behind this don't seem to point out to them that, you have to cut through. There has to be something that will grab a headline so that people will say, yes, it may be obtrusive, it may spoil the landscape, but it's only going to cost us 10p per kilowatt hour. But they don't seem to figure out how human nature works.
Oh, that's right. I mean, and also the joined-up thinking that Juan's mentioned. I noticed, sorry to mention them, but 3FM have a news thing out, I think it's this morning, saying that the government's up in arms about mountain bikes causing furrows and destruction of peatland and upland moorland and things. It's like, well, hang on a minute, you're about to destroy Erie Stain. If you go up there, it's nothing but peatland and uplands and beautiful sphagnum mosses and birds and all the rest of it. So, if you're worried about a few mountain bikes, what are you going to do when you're putting, 4 huge concrete pads up, plus all the other concrete pads for doing the manufacture of the concrete to make all this stuff? I'll crack on anyway. Jill rang in yesterday and said something I found very interesting, that rickets is on the up on the Isle of Man. So I had a quick look. Rickets has increased by at least 4 times, especially in the young population, just in the last 15 years alone in the UK. The experts are saying likely much higher, as there is no official surveillance of vitamin D levels, which I think I mentioned about 5 years ago, they stopped checking your vitamin D levels in the normal blood test. Dr. Mitch Blair at the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health says children are coming in with bendy legs, swollen wrists, and sometimes even swollen ribs. He said the condition was easily reversible once children start getting enough vitamin D. The problem is the health system won't admit that much larger doses of vitamin D are necessary to achieve what you would call optimized vitamin D levels. Blair also cited the changing demographic in the UK, with darker skinned people needing even higher doses of vitamin D to counteract the sunscreening effect of melanin in their skin. He also pointed out that countries like Canada, the US and Australia fortify their foods like milk and flour with vitamin D, but Britain doesn't. I'm finding it interesting that something that's easily changeable. But something else that I noticed with interest, I was actually talking to somebody the other day who's been on, I think it's Xanax, which is an antidepressant for years, and they were recommended by a doctor on the island to start taking a larger amount of vitamin D. So they're taking 20,000 IUs a day, which, funnily enough, is what I take. They're now completely off that. They don't have any of the side effects like liver problems taking these antidepressants, and they're absolutely thriving. And they were on those antidepressants for more than 20 years, which points me to when Dr. Alex Allinson was saying that he's upset about young people's mental health. Well, if you've got a situation where Jill's saying that rickets is on the up in young people on the island, and you've also got Alex Allinson saying he's worried about depression, well, vitamin D not only is good for doing things like making sure your bones are right and your immune system, but it's also extremely important in keeping your mood and your depressive state away. And there was a famous trial in Greenland where they gave the people living up in the north, on the Nook and places up in Greenland, about 4,000 IUs a day of vitamin D, and they dropped the suicide and depression rate by 90% within 6 weeks. So I think the vitamin D levels need to be looked at, especially on an island where we've had this Dunkelflaute with all this cloud and not a lot of sunshine.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be looked at. I think everybody needs to have their vitamin D levels checked by Nobles or their GP.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Julian. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Oh, it's 14 minutes before 1. Fatty fish, apparently. Fatty fish. The flesh of fatty fish is a good source of vitamin D. There are other foods, of course. But bearing in mind that we're landing herring now, maybe that's the solution to it. But as we come into autumn and we're heading in towards winter, obviously with the nights getting a lot longer, then vitamin D perhaps, and certainly that has been mentioned for a long time. The shortest day, I think we're 5 weeks this Saturday. 5 weeks on Saturday is Saturday, December 21st, which is the winter solstice. Hence, it's the shortest day. Bearing that in mind, just something I want to bring to your attention. It was mentioned yesterday, passing in the news, and it's regarding a Freedom of Information request from Manx Radio. And the Department of Infrastructure made multiple failings responding to a Freedom of Information request from Manx Radio. Now, the Information Commission has ordered Department of Infrastructure to provide the information which was first requested over 2 years ago. In 2022, we asked the DOI for correspondence relating to any proposals for the closure and removal of the Isle of Man's heritage railways. In November 2022, the department refused to provide the information, claiming it was exempt because it relates to the formation of policy. The matter was referred to the Information Commissioner's Office for review. The complaint has been upheld. Well, the Commissioner found that the DOI failed to comply with the request within the standard period, failed to demonstrate it undertook reasonable searches for the information, failed to provide advice and assistance, and failed to justify its application for the exemption. The Commissioner was unable to determine whether reasonable searches were undertaken and found there was no record of a public interest test being applied, adding the DOI appears to apply a blanket exemption to responses involving Council of Ministers papers instead of considering them on a case-by-case basis. As a result, the Department's now required to carry out the searches, review each item and provide the information to Manx Radio, which of course we will provide to you. Now, if the Department believes it needs to withhold some details, it's got to provide the Information Commissioner with a copy of the data and a convincing justification. So we wait to find out what's happening to the Isle of Man's heritage railways.
Yes! This Christmas, give them something they'll really love, like the iPhone 16, Apple Watch or a Samsung tablet. Discover incredible value bundles exclusively at Shaw. Plus, get an M&S voucher worth up to £200 when you combine your mobile and broadband plans. Perfect for a Christmas to remember. Visit us in-store or online at shaw.com/Christmas. T's and C's apply.
Preparing for your GCSEs or A-levels and thinking about your future? Or looking to reskill into a new industry? Choose from full-time and part-time courses or earn while you learn through an apprenticeship. From engineering, art and sport to business, IT, animal management, forensics and lots more. University College Isle of Man offer a variety of further education, degree level and postgraduate courses. We'll help set you up for a successful and rewarding future. Visit ucm.ac.im.
This November at the Gaiety Theatre, experience the riveting tale of justice, redemption and love that is Les Miserables, the drama. From the 20th to the 23rd of November, be enthralled by Parker and Snell's powerful adaptation of Victor Hugo's timeless story, where convict Jean Valjean finds purpose protecting young Cosette amidst the chaos of French rebellion. If you love the story, you'll love the drama. Les Miserables. Book your tickets now at villagaiety.com.
Coming up, we have another winning weekend here on Manx Radio. And this weekend, we're giving you the chance to win a bottle of Refuge Manx Rum from Fenoddery Distillery, crafted in celebration of the RNLI's 200th anniversary. The special limited edition rum is presented in a commemorative display box and is valued at £125, with 20% of the sales going to the RNLI. To win, all you need to do is listen out for a winning question which we'll ask on air right across the weekend. Once you've heard it, text your answer to 166 177. Make this your winning weekend with the Fenoddery Distillery and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. We are 9 minutes now before 1 o'clock. After Mannin Line today with Vintage Kelly's Eye with David Callister and Peter Kelly. Just on Manxcare's waste of money, says WhatsApper 262. I've been going to the wound clinic at Royal Ramsey Cottage Hospital since the beginning of September and have had have a card for my subsequent appointments, but I received a letter from Manxcare reminding me to attend an appointment yesterday. Mary in Ramsey. By the way, I'm completely against wind farms. The Isle of Man will be bankrupt if they follow the delusional net zero agenda. Vitamin D, well, perhaps the government can sponsor very cheap direct flights to somewhere in January and February. It's a thought, isn't it? Let's all go to the sunshine for a fortnight. Thanks also to Steve, who said, let's see, the daily climate change denial agenda is getting ridiculous. Does anybody with a brain cell really believe that the MUA has not asked the question, what do we do when there's not much wind? And if the answer was, we'll have blackouts, the MUA will just say, OK, let's crack on and see what happens. Steve says, it's farcical that people work literally with no experience in this field can broadcast this misinformation without challenge, says Steve. We haven't heard, though, from Manx Utilities, Steve. We appreciate you standing up for Manx Utilities. I don't know, maybe you work for Manx Utilities. But really, what's going to happen to 29p? I will keep banging on this, and I don't care if anybody doesn't like it. But 29p is what we pay at the moment per kilowatt hour. Has anybody in power, pardon the pun, got any idea what we're going to be paying on the other side of this agenda? Does anybody know? And if they do know, and it's good news, why keep it to yourself? Why keep the good news to yourself? If there are green and pleasant uplands there, tell us about it. 3 years ago, a doctor at Nobles told me to take vitamin tablets every day. He said everybody living on the Isle of Man should be taking vitamin D tablets, says Kath. There is an MHK surgery this coming Saturday. Every third Saturday of the month, Douglas North constituency has an MHK surgery, and it is Mr. Ashford. He's live on Mannin Line tomorrow, but he's going to be live in person on Saturday with his co-MHK in Douglas North constituency, John Wannenberg. And they're going to be in Williston School in the main assembly hall from 11:30 till 1. Also, there'll be Douglas councillors there. You want to meet Mr. Wannenberg and Mr. Ashford this coming Saturday. And also, I just must remind you that Garth Commissioners have drop-in sessions on the 28th and 29th at the Laxey Sailing Club and Baldrine Church Hall. 28th at Laxey Sailing Club, 29th at Baldrine Church Hall. This is for you to look at the proposed sewage treatment works for the parish. Manx Utilities has plans for a number of intermediate pumping stations in Laxey and a plant at Axenfell Plantation following the rejected application for the site at the Cairns in 2019. So, Laxey Sailing Club, November 29th, Baldrine Church Hall on the 29th. 28th Laxey, 29th Baldrine. That's it. Thanks to Howie Kane on the phones today.
60 years serving you as the nation's station. This is Manx Radio.
Kelly's Eye, brought to you by Ellis Brown Architects.
Peter, what's Kelly's Eye looking at today?
Today, David, by now, after 800 and goodness knows how many programmes, you'll know exactly when I say I'm looking at an oriel window.
Window, yes. A circular window which we cannot reach from here. Well, not without a very tall ladder.
Well, it's a circular window at the top, but the oriel, of course, is this bay window.
Oh, the oriel is the bay, isn't it?
Window,
oriel bay window.
Dear me, 16 years of this and you still don't know. Right, okay. Well, we're in what years ago would have called a back street. We've come back down to Esplanade Lane and we're looking at a new building. It's not quite complete if you look at it on the ground floor here. It's a tall building. Not too sure with that circular window at the top whether there's room up there or whether that's just into a roof space. But again, we've got a garage on the ground floor and what could be a fairly big garage. Obviously a concrete floor running through on metal shuttering.
Yeah.
There in the oriel bay, which has curtains, it doesn't. And it doesn't have any guttering, actually, if you notice on that little roof.
Not on this side. No.
That's illuminated. So that's obviously the lounge. There's a bedroom above, and then there may be something on top of that. You know, behind us is a property called Lake Ember, so it may well be Mr. Stoddard, was it? Stoddard?
Yes.
Yeah, who used to run it?
Yes.
Someone will know, there'll be a listener out there. This, I think, Mr. Booth, the butcher, had, and he used it as a cutting room here and then decided to build a property on it.
And the garage is a pretty large garage, isn't it?
Well, it's important because if you're building in an area like this, you need parking and you need off-street parking. And I look and see alongside two lock-up garages and I'm thinking, I know what'll happen there next. There'll be another one,
another extension,
and so it'll go on.
Whatever,
and I think listeners should just come off the promenade and walk down this back lane. You can get to it from the end of Castlemunner Avenue, opposite the former Central, and see what is happening in behind, because this is the Douglas of the future.
Well, if we look further over, just past the Taj Mahal, there's another car park area there. That looks to me as if at some time in the future that'll be ripe for development as well.
I think the plans are already approved.
Many of the most iconic buildings around the island have been designed by Ellis Brown Architects. Keep up with Ellis Brown today on Facebook or via ellisbrown.im.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.